Guys, are we really allowed to do this? It was Xander's first day on his new job as an autonomous forklift supervisor on the Deep Space Depot, the first cargo transport station that humanity had ever constructed in a system outside of Sol's jurisdiction. And on his very first day, his senior officers, Aiden and Kyle, had kindly offered to take him to a tour to one of the alien planets that they were responsible for delivering goods to. Of course, we are allowed. Isn't that the case, Kay? Aiden could gauge the hesitation in Xander's voice, even though his attention was being split between the numerous procedures for taking off from Cargo Base 17 with their unusually sturdy ship. Who would forbid us from taking our new recruit to have some healthy fun into an alien world for the first time? Kyle, who was occupying the co-pilot seat and lazing around with his mobile terminal, spoke in a resurging voice. As long as you are back before the start of your next shift, you are free, do whatever you want with your free time. What about the planet? What was it called again? Cussed something, I guess. Xander was worried about not making it back in time and losing his new job on the first day for being late, just like the kind of losers he despised the most. Is that too far away from the station? It's called Kustrulea and it's indeed far away from here. But this beauty here can take us there and back in no time at all, said Kyle as he paid at the ship's terminal. The landing can be a little rough, but that is a small price to pay for a first-class ticket to the home planet of the hottest aliens of the galaxy. Xander had a lot more questions he wanted to ask, but suddenly many G's of acceleration caused his body to press hard against his seat, and when he came to his senses again, all he could see was the distant view of the station. It was a bustling hub of activity, with ships coming and going at all hours of the day and night, a scene he had already seen when he got there on the previous day, and was not expecting to see it again so soon. He was still a little disoriented and worried, but seeing Aiden and Kyle, who had just experienced the same acceleration as himself, being so casual and not even paying attention to him, was somehow reassuring. It was like they had done that a million times already, and this time he just happened to be around. So maybe he could allow himself to relax and look forward to the hot aliens on Kustrelea. Still, something was telling him that all of that was too good to be true, so he decided to question his newfound friends a little further. So, can I ask something? Aiden and Kyle exchanged a meaningful look, and the pilot asked back, "What exactly?" "I don't know," Xander replied suspiciously. "A good place to start would be telling me how you guys knew I was interested in meeting some aliens." "That's not much of a mystery," Kyle interjected as he laughed. "Your roommate is a good friend of mine, and he said he saw you walking around your room wearing a 02 t-shirt as you were settling in. That's what gave you away." "That can't be." Xander raised an eyebrow as he spoke. "That show is hundreds of years old, and how can a t-shirt say so much about anyone?" "Well, there are actually only two kinds of people who chose to work in a place so distant from the Earth as the station. The workaholics who want to get away from everything, and, let's just say, those like you." Kyle laughed again. Aiden expanded on the explanation with a smile. "If you work long enough with the people from the station, you'll kind of get a sixth sense that allows you to distinguish between those two groups with a single glance." Xander took no offense at the comment, and, as incredible as it may seem, felt it was reassuring that there was a plausible explanation for these two guys just inviting him to take a short trip to an alien planet. But there was still one thing he was curious about. What about the aliens? Xander provided more detail. "Are they as hot as you guys said before, or you two just wanted some company to your delivery?" "We didn't lie. They are probably the hottest aliens in the galaxy," Aiden said, with a tone as serious as he could muster. "And that is not all. In case you don't know, they are all female as well," Kyle added matter-of-factly. "What?" Xander could barely believe what he just heard. How could he be so lucky to find those two guys on his first day on the job? With a tone barely hiding his excitement, he added, "Are you guys kidding me? There gotta be something wrong with them if I never heard of them before." "Well, the only downside I can think of is that they are all gold diggers, so you better be careful around them," Kyle said seriously. Aiden couldn't resist bursting out laughing at Kyle's witty, while Xander took the advice seriously. When he recovered from all the laughing, Aiden announced, "Now fasten your seatbelts because we are entering hyperspace in a minute." Xander and Kyle complied with the captain, and before they knew, the many stars in their field of view were instantly replaced by the psychedelic view of a hyperspace tunnel. The reinforced hull of their ship began to emit a series of eerie, otherworldly sounds. It was as if the very fabric of space itself was singing in a symphony that Xander had already heard before, but never at such intensity. This proved that their ship was indeed very powerful and capable of taking them far away in a short time. After a short journey of just a few minutes, they were back in normal space. The view of the large planet took up almost all the space of their window. Xander did his best to contain his anticipation as they approached the clouds in the upper atmosphere. As they got closer and closer, he tried unsuccessfully to find a gap among the clouds from which he could see the surface. So much anticipation was not good for his health, he thought. As they made their way through the thick clouds, Xander was greeted not by the paradise world he had been fantasizing about in his head, but the scene of a desolate wasteland. The skies were constantly being shrouded in a thick, choking haze, obscuring the faint light of a distant sun. Rivers of molten lava were flowing through desolate landscapes, carving deep channels through the scorched earth. Are we really in the right place? Xander could not picture the pretty aliens he was imagining in his mind living in a place like this, no matter how much he scratched his head over it. Don't be fooled by its inhospitable surface. This plant is blooming with life underground. Kyle almost couldn't contain his laughter. Xander raised an eyebrow in disbelief, but Aiden didn't allow him any time to ponder the problem. Hold on to your seats, said Aiden. We can't leave the thirsty aliens wanting too long. A spark of excitement mixed up with a little something else filled Xander's head for a second. But before he could make sense of his own thoughts, an intense acceleration coursed through his body as the whole ship gained speed and rumbled. The sound of the rushing air built in intensity, becoming a deafening roar as the craft hurtled towards the surface. The hull creaked and groaned under the immense pressure, and the sound of metal scraping against air filled the cabin. Finally, the view of what vaguely resembled a landing site came to their sight, and Aiden rushed the ship towards the place as if his life depended on that. As the ship approached the ground, looks of concern took hold of Xander's and even Kyle's faces. The craft hit the ground, bouncing and skidding along the rough terrain while Xander and Kyle were being thrown about in their seats. Aiden remained remarkably balanced and indifferent until the ship finally stopped. Xander was speechless in his seat, and Kyle looked at the pilot with a pale face, feeling deeply betrayed. "Why are you looking at me like this?" said Aiden, laughing. "You said it yourself that the landing would be rough." "Rough is an understatement. That was utterly insane," Kyle said with a tone of indignation. There, quite crying already. Everything is fine." Aiden downplayed the situation. "Let's just forget about the landing and show the hot aliens to the rookie already, because we still have a full day ahead of us." At the mention of letting the rookie see the aliens, Kyle's face magically recovered its color, and he decided to let go the issue of the landing for now. Oh, that's right. Xander must be dying to set foot on an alien planet for the first time. Have he not seen it with his own eyes, Xander wouldn't have believed how easily Kyle forgot about the landing. That had to be some sort of superpower, because he certainly wasn't able to do the same, even at the mention of hot aliens. "Put on your spacesuits already, or else you're going to die on your first breath of Custralia's air." Aiden didn't give Xander any time to recover from the shock of the landing, or rather, he didn't even acknowledge there was a shock to recover from. The mention of the hot aliens might not have been enough of an incentive for Xander to recover his mental state, but the prospect of him dying certainly was. So he rushed to unbuckle his seatbelts and wore the spacesuits that Aiden had gently shoved in between his arms. After briefly checking if the rookie had sealed his spacesuit property, Aiden unenthusiastically pushed a blinking red button hidden behind some cargo and waited for the actuators to kick in and the long ramp to slowly extend down. Kyle took the opportunity to lock the eye-protecting visor of Xander's suit and have a laugh at the rookie's expense as he struggled to find the controls to lift it back and unblock his sight. "Now be careful to not fall on your butt and make a fool out of yourself in front of the hot aliens," said Kyle as guided the momentary blind rookie down the ramp. Aiden stayed closely behind them as he watched the scene with eyes full amusement. Crazy landing, unbreathable air, annoying friends, and hot aliens. There was so much happening in so little time that Xander couldn't help but to follow along, even though he was more than able to tell that something was not quite right at this point. Unbeknownst to him, however, as soon as he felt the solid metal from the ramp giving way to sandy ground, Xander's retractable visor had been unlocked, and he finally was able to see what laid in front of him from behind a thin layer transparent glass. For a good second, Xander stood still looking straight ahead while Aiden and Kyle studied his reaction with amusement. What? What the fuck? Xander then took a step behind in fear and tripped on the ramp only to fall on his butt in front of the hot alien. What laid before him was the scariest thing he ever saw in his whole life. The bipedal alien stood at an imposing height of 3 meters tall, with a muscular build and a reptilian appearance. Its body was covered in thick, armored scales that were a mixture of greens and blues, ranging from a deep emerald to a bright turquoise. However, the most striking feature of the alien's appearance was the intricate network of glowing veins that bulged throughout its body. These veins were a brilliant shade of magma like orange and seemed to pulsate with an otherworldly energy. Its limbs were long and powerful, ending in clawed hands that seemed more fit to dig into the ground than to restrain and cut prey, which actually made it way scarier because it wouldn't kill you with a clean cut. It would instead make the suffering last longer. What the fuck is this ugly thing? It took many seconds for Xander to be able to utter a coherent sentence, and many more for him to stop behaving like a scared animal. Aiden and Kyle were laughing at his expense for the whole time, but they ended up taking some pity in him and helped him to stand up again and dust off his suit. Don't be so rude to our hot alien fried here, Xander. Kyle kept a smug smile on his face the whole time. If the translators were on, you'd have caused a rather serious diplomatic incident here. It was all a prank. Finally, reality started to sink in, and Xander understood why everything seemed to be so good to be true so far. Lies and lies. This is a fucking death world. We haven't told you a single lie today, Aiden interjected with a whole lot of satisfaction stamped on his face. Their whole body glows at almost 100 degrees at all times, so they are pretty hot if your common sense is anything close to reasonable. I was not lying when I said that they were all gold diggers either. Kyle joined the conversation as well. What do you think they use those claws for? Gold is still a very valuable commodity in the galactic market to this day. Xander recovered enough of his sanity to grow increasingly angry at his senior officers, bragging at how good they had phased their lies so that they were not technically lies. So he deliberately tried to find flaws in the previous words said by them out of spite. See that glowing thing hanging in between their legs? Xander was so angry that he didn't even realize the humor in the sentence he had just said. How do you explain that if you had not told a single lie today? Kyle stared at him with such amusement that it took him a while to remember what Xander was referring to with his question. Oh, that. That was not a lie. Believe me or not, they are all females. I can send you a copy of their biological report if you don't believe me, but if you know a thing or two about female hyenas, I bet you can guess what I mean. Xander was almost amused by how easily Kyle had escaped his accusation, but he was still angry and went for Aiden this time. Cut the bullshit already. Aiden was clearly implying something when he said that the aliens were thirsty. About that. Aiden didn't say anything else and just climbed the ramp. When he was back at the ship, he reached for the cover of one of the containers and revealed what they were transporting in the ship with a smug smile. Xander connected the dots easily at the view of what was inside the containers, hundreds of bottles of water. We are delivering water for the miners today, Aiden explained while barely containing his laughter. This is a new mine, and they requested some supplies from the station, but someone forgot to bring the water in the previous delivery, so we had to come here in a hurry. Water is somewhat of a rare resource in some parts of this planet, you know. Xander wanted to keep being angry at then, but at this point it was starting to get harder to not realize that the clues were there the whole time, and he only fell for it because Hea was thinking with the wrong head the whole time. It took him some wandering around and some keeping distance from the aliens while Aiden and Kyle interacted with them through the translator for Xander to come to terms with the fact that he had dug his own grave when he had agreed to go to an unknown planet with some unknown people. All he could do was to sigh at his own misfortune and to promise to himself he would do better next time. He was prepared to let bygones be bygones, as he was returning for the safety of the ship to avoid the scorching heat of the planet, when he heard Aiden's voice through the speakers of the spacesuit. Where do you think you are going? We mainly brought you with us because we couldn't fit any heavy machinery to help us unload the water bottles. We still have some work to do before we can get back into the ship. Kyle laughed at the look of defeat on Xander's face before saying a phase that would haunt the poor recruit for the rest of his life. We were also not lying when we said you would have some healthy fun in an alien world.